Carlyle, thank you so much for joining me at Barbie Signature. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Alan?
Oh, very well, thank you. Very well. So you've got this new BMR 1959 collection.
Woo, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you a lot of questions about that, but I'd like to start for anyone who's listening with a little bit about you, if they're not familiar with you. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for Mattel, how long you've been here, and maybe a couple examples of other things you've worked on prior to this?
Yeah, sure. So I have been at Mattel for 9 years now. Actually, this month, October 2019, is my 9-year anniversary at Mattel.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I've survived this long. Woohoo. This is actually my first job right out of school. I went to Otis College of Art and Design, studied fashion design and product design, and basically a couple months after school applied for this job. 3 months later, I got the job, so I've been here ever since. And I actually started on the Barbie Playline team. My first projects ever were these $4.99 ballerinas. They had these molded gem bodices with like an ombre glitter paint pattern, a little tutu. There was a pink one, a light pink one, a purple one, and a blue one. So those were my first projects ever. But over the years, I've worked on a lot of different things. I've worked on a lot of fashionistas, a lot of Ken fashion packs, the Fifth Harmony Barbies. My favorite Barbie that I've ever designed, I think, is Mutia Barbie, my Filipino Barbie for the Global Glamour collection.
Yeah.
Other collections I've done that I concepted totally were the Harlem Theater collection as well. I've worked on holiday Barbies, Andy Warhol Barbie, a lot of movie properties like Wrinkle in Time. I've done other celebrities like Gabby Douglas, one of a kind, just so many. Like 9 years is a lot of time to be designing, and that's just the things that have been released. There's so many things that I've done that were never released too. So it seems like a lot.
Okay. Well, one that is getting released, of course, is the BMR 1959.
Yeah, woo, finally.
Yes. And 6 of them to boot. So, I mean,
Yep.
Normally, when you're designing dolls, or at least when you've done it for Barbie Signature, it's been one at a time released, over the span of, months or years. But 6 all at once is kind of breathtaking. So maybe we can go back to, how this project started. Is this something that was, your own idea and you had to, propose it, or did, somebody else suggest the idea and say, Carlyle, you're the perfect person for this project? Or how does it work? How did it start?
So way back in 2018. So, for anyone who doesn't know, we always work about a year to a year and a half in advance. So I started designing these dolls maybe like spring of last year. And really the initial prompt from, our leadership was, what are the dolls of today? What would kids and teenagers and fashion, what does it look like today, And I personally compared it to Generation Girl of my time, because that's what I loved when I was a kid. And so, it's kind of like, what would Generation Girl look like today? And so that was kind of my initial prompt. And, I went through a few different versions of this line, basically, but eventually I came to this idea of, designing a clothing brand. I went to school for fashion design for a long time. I thought, I'm going to be a fashion designer, like for humans. But obviously now I'm doing it for dolls. But I thought, I want to create a brand, a fashion brand, and all the dolls in the line are wearing this brand. And so, I went to streetwear because that's really what's popping right now in terms of fashion. Everything from, like accessible fashion to, high fashion is, participating in this kind of athletic streetwear vibe. So that's where I wanted to go to really reflect what's happening in fashion now.
Got it. And what's your own particular relationship with streetwear style? I mean, is it something that you also are particularly invested in just personally?
I wouldn't say specifically. I think, as a designer and artist, I pay attention to everything that's happening in fashion. And, I think I'm an eclectic dresser personally, so I'll pick and choose bits of street fashion, bits of vintage, or, women's clothing, whatever, and just make my own style. So I think this was more about like, noticing this one trend that's happening and then creating dolls to reflect that.
Got it. So how do you approach this differently then? I mean, you talk about deciding that you're going to, design it as though you were designing a fashion brand and that these dolls were all wearing clothing from the brand. That's definitely a different approach from the way you've done signature dolls or mass market things. Like, is there anything in your previous experience that translates into creating a collection like this, or is it just an utterly different experience entirely?
I think it was definitely a different approach because for a line like Harlem Theater, I was thinking of characters and how those characters would interact within a specific narrative. The BMR line is not characters. It is, like I said before, a clothing brand. So for me, it was about thinking of, a specific color palette that all the dolls and therefore all the clothing would use. And then also thinking of like design principles, like, mixing big silhouettes with little silhouettes, mixing textures and prints. So thinking of it more in terms of design principles versus like character or narrative.
Got it. Okay. And so then doing the design work, you're doing it as at least partially in 3D, like you're doing this as computer design. And I don't know if everybody listening is not necessarily a member of Barbie Signature, but members at the platinum and gold status levels have been able to see a lot of the in-production images that you very kindly shared, and a lot of that includes 3D sculpting images and things like that, not just for the dolls, but the accessories too. Is that what the design process looks like for you these days, or is this a brand new approach for how you're designing dolls and accessories?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is what the design process is like now. Back in the day, people would sculpt traditionally with like clay or wax, and that's how things like bodies or face molds or even shoes were made back in the day. But now, using computer programs and then special, see, I'm not an expert, so I don't know what you call it, but it's like it's like you're sculpting in air, and it's like some kind of, I don't want to call it the wrong thing, but yeah, that is definitely what our design process is like now. Whenever we come up with design a doll, and whether it has new accessories or a new body, we're always working with our sculpting department here, who are just incredibly talented. It's about, because you're taking something that's human-like but scaling it down to, a Barbie size. So you have to get all the nuances, all the facets of a gem, all the nuances of a face sculpt. So we work really closely together, and especially for this project, I think the one major new thing that we sculpted for the BMR1959 line was a made-to-move Ken body, which is something that I know that collectors have been wanting ever since, the original made-to-move body came out, and ever since Ken kind of got different body types and kind of had a resurgence. So that's something I definitely wanted to include in this line for collectors, for the posability, and, just to give them something they wanted for a long time.
So both the male and female bodies have the made-to-move body type then?
Yes, so all the dolls in the BMR 1959 line are made to move. So they're super articulated. They can, sit on their knees. They can cross their legs. They can touch their face. They can vogue. They can do whatever you want to do.
And so then the fashions are designed specifically for those particular doll bodies too. Does that create any additional challenges for you, or any different ways of thinking that you have to bring into the process?
A little bit, because we within the BMR line we have made to move Ken, we have a tall, we have an original body, and then we have curvy as well. So it's 3 different body sizes as well, 4 different body sizes that we're working with. But I wanted to have, for the most part, have a lot of the clothing pieces be interchangeable. So I think that's where the streetwear vibe comes into. A lot of things are oversized. So like the hoodie on the man bun can be worn on any doll because it's super oversized. That clear jacket that's on the curvy doll could be worn on all the dolls too. So that was a consideration that we took into account when we were designing the clothing.
That's a really important point about being able to have the clothing swap between the different dolls, especially when you're having to factor in the different body types, and not necessarily even, petite versus curvy versus, original versus tall, but also the male and the female dolls too.
Yeah.
That must add a degree of challenge for the whole process.
Definitely. And not every piece fits exactly the same or correctly, on every body type. That's also real life too.
Right.
But I wanted to have some, some degree of, versatility and interchangeability with the fashions.
And having this diversity of body types as well as skin tones and the facial sculpts and the hair types and styles, like you worked on fashionistas, and of course that line has broken tons of new ground by expanding the range of diversity within the line. Is that something that you specifically wanted to bring to the BMR 1959 series as well?
Oh, absolutely, and that's something that I bring to everything I design, every doll, and I think that's something that it's not, that is part of our brand now. That's not something you can design without, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Every doll that I design comes with this, idea of diversity and idea of representation, and how can this doll, make somebody feel seen and represented, all different types of people.
Got it. So, that actually speaks to a question I wanted to ask you too, which is just what the collection means to you personally, I think. But, if you have more to say about that, I'd love to hear it, as well as just what are your biggest hopes for the collection?
I mean, for me, I think, this is to have like 6 dolls out, and everything is, my design or decision, like the name, the color palette, the look of the dolls themselves, like everything. I think, in a lot of ways, it's almost like my opus. It's like this is the big line that I'm offering to the Barbie collector community, to the world, that represents, who I am and how I design. And I think for it to include, dolls like, the boy with the Ken with the green hair that has makeup on his face, for that to represent, what the freedom that men and boys feel now to have makeup on their faces. So many beauty bloggers and, other people in the public eye who feel free to wear makeup. I think for a kid to see that and feel like, oh, this is me, this is what I want to do too, that's, I think, something really special and something that I want to keep within the line.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And Carlyle, I know that you have a very busy schedule and work life there at Mattel, so I just want to say thank you again so much for taking the time to talk with me and to share your thoughts about the background and the development of the BMR 1959 collection with Barbie Signature members and everybody who decides to explore more about what's going on with this brand new collection. Again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And, I hope that you guys love this line and obviously buy it a lot, duh. But I hope that it's something that you have fun with, because, I think at the end of the day, these are Barbies and you want to, get joy from them. So I hope these bring you joy.
I love it. I love it. Thank you again very much.
All right, thank you.